Hey guys, Ryan Young, Kama Jiu-Jitsu. And I want to do a quick video today with two students of mine. They're both purple belts and they've both been with me for at least a couple of years. You have David on the left in the blue gi. He's been with me for, actually, he's my oldest student now. Shortly after we opened Kama Jiu-Jitsu in Dallas, Fort Worth, he came on board. I want to say he came on board April of 2014. So we're going on 4 years now. And David had no background in Jiu-Jitsu before coming to us. On the right, in the white gi, we have Zack Womack, and he came to us beginning of 2016. Yeah, and came from another school, and so he's been with us for a little over 2 years now, or about 2 years. So what I want to do is kind of, I guess, give you some impressions of, what type of people do Jiu-Jitsu. And, we really come from various backgrounds. There's not really any one common thing. One thing that we do have a lot of at Kama Jiu-Jitsu are professionals, professional types, people who have jobs that tend to be white collar. It's not always the case, but tend to be white collar, tend to be in their middle ages, maybe high 30s to mid to late 40s is our average. Have families and all have to be at work tomorrow. Don't have any designs on being an MMA fighter or competitive or world champion competitor. Just wanting to learn Jiu-Jitsu and have a way to get into great shape, learn a great skill, and meet some good guys to hang out with. So let me start with Zack on the right. And Zack, why don't you tell us a little bit how you came to Kama Jiu-Jitsu?
Well, I moved here in January 2016 because of my job. I relocated from North Carolina and was just looking for a school to continue to do jiu-jitsu. And at my previous school, when I asked my instructor, do you know anybody in that area? Do you have any, a recommendation? And he said he just wasn't familiar with anybody in the area, but if you could find a place that's Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and self-defense oriented. And so Kama Jiu-Jitsu was really the only place in the area that offered that.
And when you came into the studio for the first time, what experience do you remember?
I remember walking in and meeting you. I mean, you were just, right there. You jumped up out of your chair, introduced yourself, and just welcomed me. And, it was a day, and that was the thing, is kind of come in. I didn't know if I was going to come in and just observe the class, but you were like, hey, if you got your gi, let's go, and so you welcomed me. The students were great. That's the thing, just like you were talking about the professionals that we have here that, you're able to relate to all of them quickly, and they just welcomed you, and it just felt like a good family atmosphere, kind of like what I was looking for.
Did you feel like you were targeted when you walked in?
No, not at all. In fact, me being from another school, I had other students asking, how you trained at other places and things, because I think it was, they got to see somebody from a different school too, instead of being around the same guys they usually train with. So, no, I didn't feel that at all.
One thing that I'll typically do when I get a visitor coming in, because at that time you hadn't joined, you're just kind of checking the school out. I usually have guys matched up with you as a training partner, guys at about your level or maybe even a little bit below your level on our end. So when you came in, what belt and what level were you?
I was a blue belt when I came in.
Did you have stripes on your belt?
Yeah, two stripes.
2-stripe blue belt. Yeah, so I think I remember partnering up with you, some of our more veteran white belts and maybe a blue belt or two. One of the things that I was pleasantly surprised with Zack was that his technique was really crisp, and he ended up catching everybody. You caught everybody with what?
An armbar.
Yeah. that was he'd catch arm bars from all different angles, and that was his thing, catching people in arm bars. Now let's go to David. So David, what brought you to Kama Jiu-Jitsu?
Man, so I had been out of school for a little bit, and I stopped working out. And I was gaining a lot of weight, so I was about like 185 pounds, and I remember talking to my wife, and I was wearing a size 34 waist, and I said, hey, babe, I think I gotta move up to a 36. And she was like, no. She looked at me, she's like, no, you're not doing that. He's like, you need to work out. So I got a gym membership, for the second time or maybe third. And I went, maybe for like a couple weeks, and then I just get bored of it, And so I was like, maybe I should, I remember when I did Wing Chun, Kung Fu for a little bit. I really liked it. I stuck with it for several years. And I remember doing something like Tai Chi, like in college. And I was like, maybe I should try that. So I was looking up some websites, looking for Tai Chi classes. And then somehow I ended up at Kama Jiu-Jitsu. And I had tried Jiu-Jitsu when I was in college once. And my first class, like someone injured my shoulder. So I was like, nah, I'm not going to do that. But then after reading like the articles that Ryan put up, saying like how safe it was and how he holds people accountable for, like injuring, you have to be responsible. And it sounded like no one ever got injured there. And it sounded like a really good place for someone like me who's out of shape. So anyways, I came by the school and I met Ryan. And I was like, you know what? I was thinking like if, I didn't want to half-ass it. And so I just signed up for the membership, and that's how I found Kama Jiu-Jitsu, is just through the websites, and the rest is history.
Yeah, I still remember that day. That was I think probably like April 15th, 2014, and I remember meeting at the studio. It wasn't a class time, and you just come in and you just said, "No, I'm going to sign up." And I said, "Do you want to try a class out?" And you said, "No, I'm just going to sign up." And I said, okay, are you sure? Because you can try it out. And, no, I'm just going to sign up. And I think you ended up buying 1 or 2 uniforms right off the bat. And I'm thinking, geez, what if he tries it out and doesn't like it? Made quite an investment. And, when I look back on it, it was a commitment on your end. I guess for some people, when you make that type of financial commitment, there's no backing out at that point.
Exactly. And that's why I did that, because I knew that if I did a trial class, maybe I would just say, no, maybe it's not right for me. But I think it helped in the beginning because, if anything, if I went back to my wife and I said, hey, I spent like a few $100 on this, she'd say, you need to go back, She's like, you need to get your money's worth. That's how my wife is.
And then one thing that I remember you told me after the first workout, you went home and you told your wife something about your experience that I thought was pretty funny. I don't know if you remember it, but do you remember what you told your wife?
Yeah, so it's like, the warm-up was like 45 minutes, right? And so long? It was long. Like, yeah, when we had him, and originally it was like 45 minutes of just straight warm-ups and stuff. And I was like, man, I feel like I'm doing P90X, because my wife and I tried P90X for a while, and it got boring quick, for me at least, And I was like, man, this is like worse than P90X. And I'm huffing and puffing, almost vomited the first time. I remember I had the first workout, we were just doing the shrimps and the rolls, and we were running, and I had to sit out the second half of the warm-up just to catch my breath, And I remember sitting out, and I just felt so weak, so I sat out the rest of the class, I remember.
So now, going back to Zack, after you went in and tapped out all my upper white belts and some of the blue belts, I can't remember who was there the day you came in, I remember training with you, and I knew that you were an arm guy at that point. So I just remember tucking my arms in, and I don't know if you remember any of that when you and I trained, stuff that I said to you or stuff that I did. Do you remember any of that?
Well, I mean, I know I couldn't armbar you there. I couldn't catch you on anything. So the biggest thing is, you kept telling me, hey, I'm leaving my neck open to choke. And I just, I had known about chokes, not like we didn't do them in my previous school, but I just didn't have a grasp of it like I do now, since that's one of my main focuses I've been concentrating on lately. So, but yeah, that's what I remember from that, is just that, and then also some of the positions, some of the simple little, like, just either from side control or side mount positions and things, to where, some of the escapes where I would used to do just didn't work anymore, and you just felt like you were just trapped, or I couldn't move. And so that was what I remember the most about that first roll we had that day.
I remember that once you joined, then that's where, we kind of take you in, and that's when now you're my student. But tell everyone about the belt.
So when I first, joined, I had a blue belt, 2-stripe, and we ended up you gave me a new belt. It was a blue belt, it was a white bar on the belt. For you to evaluate where I was at and kind of earn my either stripes back or however, you wanted to rank me as I moved up.
So now with that type of situation, a lot of people have a problem with it because, and I get it, rank is a very important thing. You work hard for it. And, back before, I think we would just kind of take your belt away and just make you wear a white belt all over again. But we instituted the white bar, but what that did was basically took your stripes away right off the bat. And, a lot of people have a problem with that. Why did you not have a problem with it?
Well, I had a different mindset. I just, I'm your student now, and I want to learn what you teach me. And so I wanted to be fully committed to that. So it didn't matter if you would have put me at a white belt. I wouldn't have cared because this was my school now, and you were my professor. So yeah, so when I joined, I just had a different mindset that, this was the jiu-jitsu I wanted to learn, and I was your student, and however you wanted to progress me, I was fine with it. I could have been a white belt if you wanted me to be. It didn't really matter. The belt didn't matter to me, and it still really doesn't. Just because you're just trying to get better every day. The belt just, kind of represents where your professor thinks you are, so that's just how I took that mindset.
So the reason why we switched the belt on you was because, although you were well into blue belt level-wise, there's no doubt in my mind at that point. It was just that you hadn't quite learned the same things that I wanted everybody at your level to know. By putting the belt on you, you then started to go through our curriculum. And you made a comment after about 30 days or so that I really remember. It was like, to me, it was like, this guy really gets it. And do you remember what that was?
Yeah, it was just like, and that was the thing, the curriculum, I think, is what really made me progress faster, as I felt, just because of, I guess I learned better in that situation. But you did have a curriculum. It was set out. Here are these steps, and we were working a ladder, and we worked it for, a whole month until I got the ladder down. And then once we were rolling, it clicked me like, man, the ladder it's every position when you're rolling. There was always a defensive position from that ladder that we were working on, and then as you get into the green ladder and you're the offensive positions now on the ladder, it's just, you just felt yourself going back to that, and you'd be able to climb it each step, and so it just kind of clicked to me then.
The hard part for me was I kind of had reservations about how quick your progress would be coming from another school, because especially you've been training for 3 years by then, you have a different system, or maybe no system in mind. A lot of people take a more random approach to their training. They don't really like to systematize it because they think it stifles their creativity and such that. And you actually picked up on our curriculum a lot faster than anybody else has. Even somebody came in brand new as a white belt, like David. David actually went through it pretty quick, relative to most people. But you had it conquered in 2 months. And I think I remember by the time you were in your 3rd month, I think that's when we put the belt back on you along with your stripes, and then I gave you another stripe on top of that. That was the quickest that I've seen anybody take control of that ladder. And I think a lot of it was because of that moment where you said, this is it, I get it now. And part of it was because I think you completely bought into it, and you had something to compare it to. One of the things that really makes you guys successful in my eyes is that you're both very, very coachable, and that if I give you an idea to work with, you guys work with it, and you guys are able to bite onto it, hold onto it, and just keep working and not deviate from it and get distracted. David, why don't you kind of tell us about that moment you and I were just talking about a couple months in when you first started actual rolling, and your training partner was 6'1" and about 230 and strong as a bull.
So he was 230, but I felt like he was like Brock Lesnar, and he was like 265, 280. And so, I'm not, physically, I'm pretty weak and, kind of feeble, but, I remember you were telling me at the very beginning that it's all about the technique. Yes, strength and physicality has something to do with it, but it's about the technique. And so if you trust in the techniques, then you can always get out. And so I had this guy, he was just on me. He liked to get on cross-side. And when he gets on cross-side, he just zaps the breath out of you and everything. And so the one thing that you always told us was like, the first thing you do is like, think about where your hands are at. And so that's what I was trying to do. Like, my hands weren't in the right place. And so I was trying to get my hands in the right place, but he was blocking it, and I tapped, just from pressure, because he was so big. So I rest up, I go over with them again, because it's a small class, and so he's my training partner that day. We go again, and then gets me in the same position, of course, and now like I'm ready for it. Now my hands are in the right place. Now I got to try to do the technique. Well, halfway through the technique, I gas out, and he taps me from pressure. Right? And I'm thinking in my head, okay, so now I gotta keep doing it, because I know it's the only way out. And eventually, I don't know how much longer, but eventually I was able to at least put some pressure on him, because he was kind of relaxed, but then he started really putting on the pressure, and that's how I could tell that what I was doing was working. So I just kept at it, and then eventually now, like I don't know how much longer after that, but I was able to get out.
Yeah.
Just doing the technique.
And now you come across some pretty big, strong guys, and I don't see you having very many problems with guys who try to exert their physicality on you these days.
Yeah, I mean, when you're like the nail for a good couple years, you start to learn to relax and trust the technique. And just using the technique, I can get out, a lot of times. So I'm not even worried anymore.
Zack, I wanted to ask you about your previous, can you tell us about your previous school?
Yeah, I was Gracie Jiu-Jitsu in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and it was, it kind of laid my foundation. I thought it was a great school, great people there. I still keep in touch with a lot of them, so kind of more self-defense oriented as well. So I did have a little bit of a background before I came here, and this is really, I think my self-defense has gotten way much just because we concentrate a little bit more on it, and so it's just developed to be a little bit more sharper. But it was a good school. It was growing, getting bigger. So I had a great experience there. Coming here, I think I just felt that I've been able to fill some gaps and just be really sharper on my technique, start to use more. I know when I got here, I didn't play heavy at all. I was on my knees a lot, and I couldn't hold people down or, as I thought I could until I got here, until after I started to learn our curriculum here, and now just more on weight and pressure and connection. Now I'm starting to get an understanding more of that, and so that's just kind of helped elevate my game a little bit.
Yeah, I remember thinking to myself that your instructor was a little bit off of the radar. He's not anybody I'd heard of before, and me being in this art for a while, I've heard of a lot of people, but I was pleasantly surprised at how well-grounded you were in the fundamentals. And we just tried to enhance what you already had going on. Yeah. Hey, David, I wanted to ask you one last question. And it has to do with being able to stick with what you're tasked to learn is, and stop yourself from being distracted, because I know that other people who train and who don't seem to be as disciplined or able to stay as disciplined. It's always attractive to look and see at other things. Hey, what are they doing? Let me kind of play around with that, or what's going on with this video. And the newest, greatest sensation in grappling right now is doing this particular technique. But yet you've been able to kind of stay focused. Can you go over with the viewers what you feel are advantages, or how it benefited you, or even how it was a detriment to you?
Yeah, so at our school, the way you teach us, you teach us the technique, and but there are so many variations to that one technique. And so when I roll with some other people outside, they know a lot of these things, but it's what you call it. They don't have like a good enough command of all these things. So like if you're looking at this guy who has 10 different techniques from, like one position, he may know maybe like 20% of each position. And maybe I only know 2 of those, but I know 40% of those 2 positions and I don't know the rest of it. Then I have a better command of that one technique, and I could use that technique against him, and I can normally execute it better. And so I think that's kind of what I've seen when I go out. Yes, all those other moves are attractive and everything, but unless you train every day, I just don't have enough time to do that. So with this type of program, this type of school, the way you teach, it's perfect for me because yes, we practice this position so many times that when I get to that position, I'm fully comfortable. Whether it's on my back or when I'm on top, I'm fully comfortable. And then we start working, what if they put their hands here? Well, you have a defense to this. But it's one thing to know the technique. It's another thing to do it instinctively. So being part of your game. So the people that are really good, I think, are the ones that have done it so much that they can do it instinctively without even thinking about it. And I think that's one of the big advantages here is that, yes, we'll whenever you feel like we're ready, then you'll show us something. You'll kind of feed us one technique at a time. Sometimes you'll give me a technique and I'll work on it for like 3 months, even 6 months before I can feel comfortable moving on to the next one. And I think that style for me has been very beneficial, and that's why I think I've progressed so fast. And if I had if I had like 10 different techniques to try to learn, I'm just going to be all over the place, and I probably won't progress. I probably wouldn't have progressed as fast as I have.
I know we have a mutual acquaintance who at one time, was coming up alongside you in jiu-jitsu, and at one time, I guess you got your blue belts together. And I think he was better than you were at the time. And now, you fast forward 2.5 years. And I know he and I had some disagreements on this particular method of teaching. His thought process was to learn as much as you can all the time and not restrict yourself. I don't know, just kind of, basing on some conversations and some training sessions that you have with your friends. I mean, you're kind of head and shoulders above everybody at this point. That's, in a way, that's validation for me, but it to me, it's just a simple thing of focus. I guess some people like to think that or they say, I'm trying to keep people from learning something, and I don't really think that's it. I'm just, saying, like you had just mentioned, that when you're ready for it, you'll get it. I want to thank you guys for this. Are there any last things that you thought the people might want to know that you think, based on your experience, especially you, Zack, being in another school, or you, David, having only been at this school, what kind of things you think people that are maybe a white belt and blue belt might be able to benefit from your experience?
Yeah, I think just kind of piggybacking off of what David said, it's not the amount of techniques you know. It's just kind of, how well do you know those 10 techniques or however many you have. But that's the thing that's, you just don't ever get away from the basics. I think if you can just really, really get good, if you be a black belt at the basics, I think you're ahead of the game of a lot of people. So, that's just kind of what I've realized, just even having to switch to another school, is just going back to those basics and refining those techniques and really building off your foundation.
Yeah, there are actually 2 things that you kind of tell us over and over again. One is to leave your ego at the door. And so if you don't care about getting tapped, you actually, open it up to learn so much more. And with that, seeking the discomfort thing. And so even when you're rolling, when I roll, I let people get everything deep, and that's my challenge, is try to get out when you have like a choke in deep. And if I can get out, then I can definitely get out when I'm really trying to block it, So I think those are the 2 concepts, like you don't be afraid to tap, and seek discomfort, and you'll just exponentially like learn a lot faster, your growth will just grow like exponentially, and it just opens up a whole new thing. Because you'll never know who you run into that might be bigger, stronger, more technical. and they're gonna get you, you know, and so I think it better prepares you for those types of situations when they can get things deep and you're fine, you're relaxed. So I think those are the two main things that I think of every time I step on the mats.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. All right, let's get to training.